All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's call this meeting to order. Can I get a motion, please, that the agenda for the May 5th, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Councilor Chenard will make that motion. Go ahead, CEO Derricott.
Sorry, it is as amended. We did have the sundry item that was added to the agenda.
Oh, yes. Thank you. As amended, Councilor Chenard?
Yes, as amended.
All right, all those in favor? Councilor Curry? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that the minutes of the April 21st, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Councilor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. Councilor Curry, you in favor? All those in favor in the room? Motion carried. We have no public hearings, no delegations. We're going to move on to reading of bylaws. Can I get a motion, please, that council give first reading to the 2020 mill rate bylaw number 2245 as amended? Councilor Bevan will make that motion, and we have Ms. Bittner here with us to walk us through the mill rate bylaw.
Certainly, Your Worship, good evening. In front of you there is a slight amendment to page 2. There was some typos there. Hopefully Councillor Curry got the email that we sent as well, just to show those typos that were there. It did not change the mill rates or change the amount of tax collected. So, all right, so we do a little bit of a rundown on the assessment when we're going through the mill rate bylaws. So our total assessment was decreased by 1.72. This is all our assessment, including all the exempt buildings in town, including the hospital and things like that that don't actually get taxed. But our taxable assessment was decreased by 2.6%. This is the properties that are used to generate our tax revenue, and we set our mill rates based on this assessment. Went down around 34 million. 33 million of that was residential, and the one was non-residential. So if you're looking at our ratio, our sort of desired balance is 65-35. We're at 66-34 this year. But I think it's important to realise that that was more from residential dropping than getting more non-res, which was sort of, I think, was the objective behind that. So a couple of the other mill rates that we talk about, the Evergreens mill rate. Go to the next page on the memo here. You notice it's gone up. The mill rate's gone up 13%. Over the years with Evergreen, we have been putting away, even years when there wasn't a capital project, putting money aside into a liability account to help us when we did have capital requisitions from Evergreens, just so that we could kind of keep our mill rate fairly steady. What's happened here is though what we've put away in the past years has now been depleted. And with Hinton 1 being built directly after the Edson 1, we don't have years to actually bolster some of that liability account. So this will be more the mill rate you'll kind of see moving forward, I think, while the Hinton construction is going on. For the schools for this year, if you remember last year, the budget wasn't passed in time. The provincial budget wasn't passed in time for us to know what our school requisition was going to be. So we did an estimate last year of a 5% increase. When the budget came down in November, there was no increase. So we had quite a large over levy last year for our school. So that is why you can see that school mill rate has dropped quite a bit, because it's been bolstered by the money that we collected last year has now been moved forward into this year's collection. The other one we have there is the designated industrial properties one. Just a little bit in the memo there. It's a very low mill rate. That's the one that the province also sets. So that's one that we have to collect for the province. So it's sort of a rundown on the assessment and also the mill rate. So we have done this with the 20-80 split that was discussed at the last meeting. And so that's now with the mill rates different than what you saw at the last meeting after we had a discussion and found that we had to take that from a different area. These mill rates have actually gone down. So there's actually now about $540,000 that's going towards taxation rather than the $250,000 that was mentioned at the last meeting.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bittner. We'll open the floor to questions, comments, or concerns. Councillor Chenard.
Okay, so the public understands. So what does that work out to in percentage? Like we see the mill rates. Do we have how much percentage drop we're going to have for res and non-res? Do we have a breakdown what that would equal to?
I don't know the percentage per each one, but obviously that 5% overall is for all of that. There was about 450 that came off the non-res and about 110 that came off the.
So what would, that would be a fair question, that what would that work out in percentage? Would be a
I
decrease?
don't have that with me.
Okay.
That was me contract.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Beyer?
Through the chair to administration, Ms. Bittner, would you mind just repeating the last part you just said there, the 540,000 going towards taxation instead of the 250 based on the height? Can you just elaborate on that a little further, please?
Last week we were talking about taking the 5% from the 2020 budget. The 2020 budget also had that reallocation of the recycling amounts that went from taxation into utility bills, and that caused some confusion on my part on which amount to take the 5% from. So I've taken it from the wrong amount. It was actually the lower amount that it should have come from. So it means that we're actually giving more money back towards the property owners for the 2020 taxation year. Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Just to recap for anybody that might be watching. So on a $100,000 worth of assessment, what would be the amount of decrease for commercial, and then what would it be for residential? Obviously, we have changes in assessment, so how that's going to impact individual properties is going to be a little different, but just a general sense.
Just one moment. I don't actually have that here. I know we did put it out in the release. I don't know if Mr. Beach, you can help me remember those.
Yeah, it was about $13 for residential per 100,000 and about $100 per non-res.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bittner. And of course, residential property owners also, or utility consumers also got the $100 utility credit. So in total, there's about $750,000, give or take, that council has basically given back to taxpayers this year to help them out. So I think we can be all pretty proud of that. So with no other questions, I'll call the question. Councillor Curry, you in favor?
In favor.
All right, all those in the room in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to bylaw number 2245 as amended? Councillor Sorensen will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that bylaw number 2245 be placed for third reading? Councillor Chenard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? All those in favor in the room? Motion carried. And can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2245? Councillor Beyer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Councillor Curry is in favor. All those in the room in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that in accordance with the revised parameters listed within the RFD below, members of council be allowed to participate in council and committee of the whole meetings via electronic communication during the COVID-19 pandemic if they so choose? Councillor Beyer will make that motion. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We did talk about this here at committee last week. I'll ask if there's any questions. Councillor Chenard.
I know we talked about it, but what about when we go in camera? It's probably still can't do that. There's an in-camera system.
As it states in the memo, yes, will be able to participate in remote communication, may participate in closed sessions, but must ensure they take all necessary precautions to maintain the integrity and confidentiality of such sessions. And technologically here as well, we have a redundant system to ensure that in-camera sessions don't accidentally go public online.
Thank you for that. I did find it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Councillor Curry, you in favor? Thank you. All those in the room in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council appoint Terry Williams as the designated clerk for the West Yellowhead Regional Assessment Review Board for a one-year term starting on May 6, 2020. Councillor Bevan will make that motion, and we have Ms. Bittner to talk about this.
Thank you, Your Worship. A number of years ago, Council may remember, we joined with some neighbouring municipalities, Hinton and Jasper, and came up with a sort of a regional assessment review board where we can share the members of the board that come and actually do our assessment reviews. This is each municipality takes a year where they organise it all for the group. And this year it's Hinton, and we are appointing Terry Williams as the clerk and Nigel Knight as the designated chair.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, Councillor Curry, are you in favor? In the room, all those in favor, motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council appoint Nigel Knight as the designated chair of the West Hillhead Regional Assessment Review Board for a one-year term starting May 6, 2020. And Councillor Curry, would you like to make that motion? Thank you, Councillor Curry, for making that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried.
That's history, our first motion made out of the room.
That's right. We have no information items, and we have one sundry item that was added to the agenda. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the COVID-19 update report for information? Councillor Bevan will make that motion, and I'll hand things over to CEO Derricott and Mr. Schramm, our Director of Protective Services.
Yeah, I'll just invite Mr. Schramm to give a brief overview. Most of the information is contained there in the memo, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that council has. Al?
Okay, we did do a quick update for the COVID-19 pandemic. As we know, it's always a dynamic and changing evolution. One of the things that the stats we put on your report have already changed for today's release has been out. Let's just give a quick update on that. For today, our cases are up to 58, 193 cases, 87 hospitalizations with 20 people in the ICU unit. Our current death toll is at 106, which is not great. In Edson, we have 2 cases. One of those cases are already recovered. The thing to remember, though, even though our caseload is going up provincially, we have to understand that's a big part due to the increased testing that we're doing, which is very positive. The thing that we always monitor, and we monitor closely to get AHS's perspective, is the hospitalizations in the ICUs have been really standard. They haven't fluctuated too much. They've been real standard and not fluctuating much, which is good. So that means that even though the more people are testing positive, our hospital capacity is able to deal with those that are there. The big thing we want to really increase on this is the provincial relaunch was announced a couple of days ago, and the 3 phases of that. And as our ECC group got together, we thought, with the provincial doing a relaunch, some of the things we wanted to do a relaunch as well from our municipal perspective. So we've come up with this. We really want to follow closely the provincial lead on that. It just makes sense. A lot of things that we've done in our ECC group for the town of Edson has been following the provincial lead. So we posted up there our municipal relaunch strategy. 3 of the key things that we want to look at is number 1, integration of our civic center back to some operations. We really want to make sure that we maintain our social and physical distancing. We want to look at our Wilmer Park based on our parks facilities opening as well. So again, May 14th is the provincial relaunch. We want to do some modified relaunches as well. And then moving into June 1st and June 15th. These will all be our phase 1 relaunch dates. Any questions on our municipal relaunch before we move to the next phase?
All right, I'll open the floor to questions. And we have questions so far on the municipal relaunch. Councillor Sorensen.
It's not so much a question through the chair to the administration. I am disappointed that council, well, this was released to the public before council got to see it or comment on it. I believe the public will hold council accountable for services or facilities being reopened. And I know this is going to have financial and service level decisions are of council. So I believe that we should have had some at least opportunity to comment on this before it was released to the public.
CEO Derricott, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor, through the chair, Councillor Sorensen. Certainly appreciate that perspective. I think for two main purposes. This was really an activity that we felt was administrative in nature. One is emergency management is really an administrative function. And then most of these are touching on operational points, hours of operation in facilities, those types of things. I do think it is certainly understandable and regrettable that council didn't see this before it went out to the public, but I'm not sure that there's specifically a lot here that we would have been, invited council specific feedback on. Certainly want to make sure that council is aware of significant service level changes and financial implications. Like you said, those are absolutely in the realm of council's area of responsibility. We do not anticipate this to have any major financial ramifications or service level impacts that we would consider out of the ordinary, except for in the fact they were a response to the current emergent circumstances. But regardless of all of that, certainly the point is taken.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sharp.
I've got two parts to this question. The one of them, like an example, businesses, and I'm going to pick on my favorite. So like hair shops are allowed to open May 14th. So would the businesses follow the actual provincial guidelines, or do we have anything in place to say, hey, you know what, even though the province says you can, the town would say, no, we don't feel it's safe?
Do I have administration?
Yeah, to the chair, to Councillor Sharp, our approach has always been to follow the province's lead. We would not want to limit any of our businesses from opening when the province is allowing them to relaunch and get going. We strongly support the provincial stance on relaunch. Again, we believe the economy is important as well as the safety of our residents. So we will follow the provincial lead with May 14th being the opening of most of our small retail businesses in our community.
If I can do just,
I think I would just, if I may, I just would add to that as well is we also don't want to, in particular as we're relaxing restrictions, I think we want to avoid moving into any spaces where the municipality typically wouldn't have any input or directives. And in this case, we feel that this is provincial health directives that have impacted most business closures. And so we don't intend to get involved in that process unless absolutely necessary.
okay, the other part is too, is people are asking, so if they have questions, so if they say, okay, I'm allowed to reopen, where would they best find the information for rules or regulations? So I'm going to use hair shop again, but there's certain rules that are applied. Where would they find the information? Where would be the best source to what they're expected to do to reopen?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Schnarr, the best place for their resources is on provincial websites. Alberta Health Services and provincial sites, they have a lot of great information there. If they have direct questions, they can go to that BizConnect, which is a provincial email address that the province is really encouraging businesses to ask those questions, and they'll give them the answers. That's the resource for the general public and retail have to go to, because he can give them the correct answers.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, I agree with Councillor Sorensen. I'd like to see this first, but I also realize too, and the people here that have been talking, they know this is just a guideline, and if the business don't want to open up themselves, they won't open up. They don't feel comfortable, and they may do it at a later date, even though they know they could go on the 14th or the 1st. I know there's some that are saying right now that I've talked to that they may not open up because they're still not quite comfortable. So they have the choice whether they can open or not, and that's, which is a nice thing, even though it's coming from provincial, and we're saying we can also do it too. So that's a nice thing.
Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Bevan. We certainly take that approach, as you can see. Even though as of May 14th, we could theoretically open back to regular hours or similar operations, but we're taking a gradual approach to it. I think both in terms of reminding and encouraging people that physical and social distancing is still really important. Will actively be encouraging people to conduct their business with the town through digital or online mediums wherever possible into the foreseeable future. We also want to make sure that our protocols function well as people do come in and access the building, that those are all working well. Assuming those all work well, then we will open more and return closer to a normal operating setting. But as Al suggested before, we want to be a participant in the relaunch in a responsible way, and this is intended to reflect that intent.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
If I have another one to ask, there's another comment, if everyone's done,
Well, I'm going to make a comment first.
go ahead, yeah.
So to Councillor Sorensen's point, I couldn't disagree with him more. It's been very clear in any emergency management training that council and politicians are not involved in the decision-making in an emergency management situation. For sure, there's room for feedback, and I think that's fairly important at the appropriate steps, but the function of emergency management rests at the administrative level, where council provides the overall oversight of policy and provides input. So, and I've already communicated that to Councillor Sorensen. So I just want to put that on record. I think administration has done a wonderful job here in terms of dealing with this emergency. And I think that, you know, when we look at our emergency management committee, that function is to provide information to council and to give a general overview over the policy and what's going on, but it's not for council to make those decisions. Those decisions have to rest with the decisions of emergency management personnel. So, Councillor Sorensen, if you want to respond.
From my understanding, the Emergency Management Advisory Committee creates plans for dealing with emergencies as well as reopening after emergencies. And it's the ECC that implements those plans. I totally concede that the ECC has the skills and training to make safety decisions. However, opening facilities is not a safety concern. It's a financial and service level decision. And the town council or the Emergency Management Advisory Committee might decide to keep things closed longer than the province, for instance, decides. So I believe I was correct in saying that the Emergency Management Advisory Committee should be the one creating the plan for reopening. And this is a service level and financial decision. Thank you.
And to that point, that's under a state of local emergency, which we were not. Go ahead, see what Eric.
Yes, thank you. If I may, Your Worship, just a few thoughts. On the whole, I feel both at the council and administrative level and collectively that we have responded, I think, really well to the scenarios and have made collaborative decisions, generally speaking, with council. I would just suggest to Councillor Sorensen that there's a distinction to be made between the planning of events and parameters and policies and guiding principles. Those are not intended to be the actual responses in a specific event, but to set policy for general emergency response. Inside an event specifically, the Emergency Coordination Center is the decision-making body in terms of responses. And while it's very clear that service levels or financial implications can be made by facility closures, I would just clarify as well that I think we can all agree that this is about safety primarily. It's public health and safety is what's driving these decisions. It's certainly from an administrative perspective. It's certainly interesting. It's been an interesting experience for me as I've been both in emergency coordination centers that were responding to in high intensity events that are happening really quickly, all right in front of you, versus an event like this that has been a slow burn, if you will, a slow process over time. But I think most of those principles are still in place. Very happy to continue to learn as an administrative team and as an emergency response team from this process. And I think it is very important that our council feels connected to and comfortable with the processes, but those lines do need to be, I think, just be distinct and clear. And if anything, perhaps there's some work that could have been done there to just make sure council was comfortable with where they were in the process. And for that, as I said before, we'll certainly take that back as a group and reflect on it.
Councillor Barr, you haven't spoken yet.
Yes, to the chair, to administration, I just got 2 questions. First is, what is the response being from the public with having the Civic Center closed and using the online or other methods of dealing with their business?
I think, through the chair, I'll comment and then I'll maybe ask Sarah to comment as well, as her staff is the one who would typically deal with. So I think in general, from my perspective, again, it's been quite gratifying to see societally, generally, people have been really, really respectful, I think, of the closures. And so we haven't had a lot of people just in general putting pressure on facilities or businesses that are closed. And I think that's been our experience here. Specifically, it has been minor limitations in terms of the business that we conduct. We've always had most of our services, processes available through online formats. And I think now it's just encouraged people who may have been comfortable doing it a certain way for a long time. Once that the opportunity to come in and physically be here was removed, they transitioned quite easily for the most part to some of those digital methods. It will be interesting to see when we reopen if we have a whole bunch of people that return to the town office, or will we have a majority of those that used to attend stick to digital means. Also, I would just add to that foot traffic is been steadily declining in the Civic Center for many years now. And so this may have just been a bigger step than normal in that trend. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think I have too much to add. I actually asked my staff this morning whether they'd heard any people ringing and complaining, but they haven't really had. I think the public is very understanding of what's going on. And just we also added another way of paying to our list of payments. People can now do e-transfer, which I think was the one thing that was sort of missing from the electronic payments that we had. But I think we put that in about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that's actually being used quite a lot. So yeah, we're just going to wait and see what happens when we actually open and see whether people are actually now embracing the electronic way of paying rather than coming in.
Perhaps I would just maybe also ask if Steve has seen or heard any dialogue out there about the closures.
Yeah, nothing substantial. I've helped a few people through the just paying electronically, but that's maybe 2 or 3 people in the last 2 months.
And follow-up?
Yes, and one more. So regarding on the May 14th, I think it also says on June 1st relaunch, it says masks required where distancing cannot be met. Is that by the staff or is that by people coming in, and then who would provide that?
Thank you. Yeah, so this would be, so our intent here is to allow for people to come in and have what we would consider essential meetings, ones that we don't think could reasonably be conducted effectively online, which quite frankly, there's not very many scenarios that fit into that category, but if there was, if there was a meeting that was required and we didn't have a space where you could do the 2 meter social distancing, then they would have to wear masks. I think that's unlikely. Typically meetings are 1 or 2 people. We can accommodate those in a room with the distancing. We will be making masks available to our staff. I think based on the volume we anticipate, we would probably make those available to the members of the public as well. And again, it's just to make sure, I think this is more about reinforcing the fact that we are still following the social distancing, physical distancing protocols that are in place from AHS, which are very clearly stipulate that if physical distancing can't be accomplished, that masks are recommended. I may just add as well that council will see some physical change to the building. There will be some screening put up, as you've seen in many other establishments that you've gone to, as well as there will be some temporary doors added in the 2 hallways here so that the public cannot access anything but the lobby area of this building. Quite frankly, that's been something we've been talking about doing for quite some time. This has just now pushed us into a space where we feel that we're going to do that. So that may take a little getting used to for everyone. I don't think it will have really big impact on any of the day-to-day operations, but it will look and feel maybe a little bit different when you come into the town office.
projects.
All right, thank you. Councillor Schnarr.
The mask question has been answered. I also would agree with Councillor Sorensen, but the way I understand it, he didn't ask the question to interfere. He was asking, prior to going to public, inform council. So like, I mean, I agree, we understand the rules, but I believe he was asking a question before it was released to public. We get an email and say, hey, this is what we're planning, because after it's released, we may get asked questions. So if I understand, Councilor Sorensen, I believe that's the question you were asking, just to bring us up to date first before release to public.
Is there a question?
No, I was just agreeing with you, saying that the way I understand it, the question you asked was, in the future, when something like this happens, just send us the information first. We're not asking to change it or interfere, but just so we're not blindsided.
Thank you, and as I said, I think with all of that dialogue that we've had here, that is certainly a piece, and we typically, I think council would agree that we typically are pretty good
Yes.
at making sure council gets it before it's publicized. Sometimes it's only just before, but at least before, and quite frankly, in this case, that didn't happen and could have, and I think it would be a fair point to say should have happened, and we'll certainly, like I said, take that under advisement.
All right, I'll call the question. All those in, or sorry, you had more you wanted to add to your presentation. Go ahead.
Beyond the relaunch strategy, there are a couple more little things. The province has been very clear and upfront about the potential for stimulus funding and all this stuff. So we have attached some of our project-ready projects that are shovel-ready, I guess, shovel-ready projects. So we have attached that list also for council to review and have that information. And the final thing is obviously the economy and the economic recovery is pretty key and fundamental to all the relaunch and all getting back to work. And you see probably at the committee of the whole next meeting, discussion on the economic recovery task force type of process. So those will be coming forward as well. I think the big thing to remember is, and we've covered that really well, is our main goal is to really look after the health and safety of our residents. And I think our ECC group has done a pretty good job in doing that, and really we're following the provincial guidance on that, specifically Alberta Health and their directives, and also the AEMA on their direction as well. So we've done well on that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schramm. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Sorensen, then Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to administration, is the list of capital projects in priority order here, or is just, sorry?
Thank you. No, I wouldn't describe it as a priority level. I think it would be more in a readiness level, those that are further along in the design stage or nearer the top. And that's honestly just kind of how it came out in our thought process. So that's more how I would describe the ordering. As you can see, the ones at the top are completely designed. The ones at the bottom are still very conceptual in nature. So.
All right, Councillor Byer.
Just through the chair to council and administration. I appreciate having this list here. I know we've talked about a lot of these, and then when you see it on paper, it's a really long list of projects that we, are, some are essential. Most of them are quite essential, I think, to our community. And I would hope that anybody listening can tell their buddies that have businesses that might be able to get on this to make sure they stay tuned if we get to do any of these. So we can encourage our local businesses to benefit from anything that the town does.
All right, thank you, Councillor Schnarr.
I'm also very pleased with these. If they choose any of them and we get them paid for, they're very good. My only question is because I'm concerned about First Avenue over at the far end of 48th Street. So if that project is chosen, we're going to have input before it moves forward, because we do have an issue, a huge issue at the end of 48th Street that we have to be careful before we open up that Pandora box.
Go ahead, Theodore.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Schnurr. I'm not sure what kind of input you're looking for. We would hire professionals to do assessments and designs, and council would have their regular approvals process in terms of moving forward with any project based on the information we would receive from our professional consultants. And if you're referring to the potential presence of hydrocarbons and others, we are certainly generally aware of those challenges that exist there. and we'll undertake the appropriate assessments before we proceed. And the council did, this is not a document that takes away council's budgetary responsibilities or anything like that. So any of these projects, whether they're grant funded or not, would ultimately need to be still reviewed and approved specifically by council, unless they, or before they were to proceed. And I would also just note that many of these, I would say, 2/3 or more are from our current 5-year capital plan already. And so these are already projects that council, believe it or not, has seen and generally approved as part of that long-term capital plan, with the exception of a few of the larger, the West End Sewer line and a few others.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, you good?
No.
No questions? All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. And we have council committee reports. We're going to April the 22nd, and we will start with Councillor Curry.
Okay, I just have one to sorry, I'm getting my calendar up here. The historical meeting, we tried to meet on the 23rd, and then you guys might have noticed, but we had a little bit of a power outage. But then met again, sorry, I got my days wrong there, the 30th, met on the 1st. And just an update that they did look at their budget and they passed an emergency budget for the current situation with the shutdown and such. So they were able to do some cuts. They are looking at a $40,000 loss in revenue through this, with the loss of rentals and the store and such. But one of the big things, they still did come up with some savings. And one of the big things they did decide is that their entire staff will be taking the 0.9 to mirror the town employees, just to mirror and support their major funder. So that was their big one. And they have been quite busy, being that their rentals are usually so busy on a regular basis. This is actually allowing them to spend some time really working on the museum and the artifacts and quite a bit of that stuff that often gets put to the side with all their rentals and the events. And they are fortunate, and I do believe they are in stage 2. I want to say it might have been in stage 1, but I think stage 2 for the reopening with the province. So they're already looking at that and seeing how that'll work with them, but they want to make sure that it mirrors what the civil center and the town is doing too, just to make sure that they're in alignment with the town. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Bevan.
Just one, April 23rd, an IRC teleconference meeting, and that is it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Schnarr.
The one we all forgot about on the 28th, we had FCSS and the Committee of the Whole on the 28th. That's my only 2, so I did not forget them.
Councillor Sorensen.
On April 22nd, I had the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority meeting. We received the auditor's reports for 2019. They found an error in our 2018 year end, so they had to go back and fix that. It was a significant number, but it was just a difference between Hinton's reporting and the authority's reporting. They did recommend that all municipalities redo their MOU, their Memorandum of Understanding with the authority. Those letters are very old, and they're not all consistent, and they haven't kept up to date with the current realities. So the auditor has recommended that we redo those MOUs this year. They're going to improve their monthly reconciliations a little bit with actual tonnage. The auditor thinks that'll help miss any year-end corrections that need to be done. And there is a significant accounts receivable account. So I'll leave that there. April 28th, I had the FCSS meeting as well as committee of the whole meeting. Yesterday I had a youth council meeting. We did a Zoom meeting. I would comment, one of the questions asked to youth council is how they and their friends are handling the situation of staying at home. And one youth counselor did comment that that they felt a lot of mental stress, and some of their friends were under a lot of pressure and didn't know where to turn. They didn't feel it was appropriate to call provincial hotlines. They know there are provincial hotlines available, but they feel it's more for serious like suicide events, and they don't feel it's appropriate for just regular stress levels. So hopefully we can make our youth feel like there are avenues that they can turn to. And I know we're going to work through youth council to improve those linkages and make sure those services are well aware of.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen. Councillor Barr.
Thank you. So I had the on April 28th, the FCSS board meeting, and then followed by the committee of the whole. And yesterday, just a partial, I was just able to attend the latter half of the youth council meeting on May 4th and through the Zoom. And I thought it was an interesting way to meet with the youth, and a lot of their technology, they were able to handle that technology. And yeah, it's good to start hearing their feedback, and they are going to continue working on some of the projects through Zoom, kind of realizing that they can continue to meet virtually on what some of the work that they're trying to accomplish. So they're going to keep meeting that way now that they've kind of got this set up already.
All right, thank you, Councillor Byer. On April 28th, I had the FCSS board meeting as well as COW. And then on May 4th, Mayor Kalinsky, Mayor Ireland, Mayor Michaels, and myself, along with West Yellow Community Futures and Alberta Labor, had a Zoom meeting with regional business partners. There were about 70 participants on the call, counted about 20 from the Edson area, to talk about some of the challenges in relation to COVID-19 and how they're coping. And a lot of the questions had to do more with the provincial and federal programs that have been rolled out. So we certainly will be contacting our upper levels of government to get clarifications. But we're able to share some of the things that we're doing regionally as well, and hopefully connect some of those business folks to some of the organizations that we have to help support them, like Community Futures and the local chambers. With some really, really good dialogue. I think for us with Jasper, it's a big challenge for them with tourism being shut down, and when tourism is shut down in Jasper, it impacts Edson and impacts Hinton as well. So I think we'll have to do some work regionally to help support Jasper through this and look at ways on how we can support our neighbors and work together. We are stronger together than we were apart. I do want to give a shout out to Mr. Bethg as well as Martino and Julia, who did all the technical stuff behind the scenes, and Giles as well. We did the hosting part of it, and it worked out really well. So we're looking at hopefully doing another one in the future. So, and that's my report. We have no financial items. Questions from media and public regarding items from this council meeting. Kayla, do we have any emails in? Anybody who has a question about tonight's council meeting can email civiccenter@edson.ca. And with that, I will take a motion to move into a closed session in accordance with the sections noted in the agenda package. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Councillor Curry's in favor. All those in the room in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion for adjournment, please? Councillor Sharnaro make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, you favor? All those in favor? Motion carried.
I like that. It's really